So I'm going to tell you the story of how traits were inherited in my family as we're starting this unit on genetics. So we start the story with my grandparents. So this is my grandparent on my dad's side. Her name is Carolyn. Okay, and she was married to Gramps. His name is Edsel, not a funny name. And on my mom's side, we have my grandparents Nancy, and we have my grandfather. His name was Gilbert. I have interesting grandparent names. All right, so Carolyn and Nancy. Carolyn had curly brown hair and some brown eyes. Edsel had blonde hair. He was bald. A lot of a lot of the male people in my family are bald, actually. Nancy, when she was younger, before she had old lady like curly hair, she had very straight blonde hair. And Gilbert also was bald, and he had blonde hair. So Nancy and Gilbert both also had blue eyes. So we're going to see how these traits were inherited to their children. Nancy and Gilbert had 4 kids. And over here, Carolyn and Edsel, they had 5 kids. So we're going to have a lot of examples of how traits were inherited from parent to offspring. Oh, let's see if we can fit one more in there. There we go. Okay, so Nancy and Gilbert both have blonde hair and blue eyes. So what do you think kids are going to have? We have Betty. We have Bob, Brenda, and we have my mom, Wanda. Yep, that's right. Betty, Bob, Brenda, and Wanda. So let's see. Nancy and Gilbert had 4 kids, and guess what? If you guessed they all had blonde hair and blue eyes, you'd be right. So Betty, Bob actually did have hair. Does have hair. Brenda has blonde hair. They all have very, very white blonde hair, actually. And my mom has long blonde hair as well. And they all have blue eyes. Okay. Sort of makes sense, right? Their parents have blonde hair and blue eyes, and so do their kids. All right, so Carolyn, though, Carolyn and Edsel, they look different from each other. So no, sorry, my plug fell out. Let's see if this will hold. All right, so Carolyn and Edsel have 5 kids, and let's see how their traits work together. So we have the children's names are Chip. His name's actually Edsel Jr., but he's Chip off the old block, so his name is Chip. Then we have Tom. Then we have Liz. Then we have Brian. And we have my dad. His name is Charlie. Okay, so Chip, he's bald, brown hair, brown eyes. Tom, he has brown hair, also bald, but he has blue eyes. Interesting. Let's see Liz. Liz has blonde hair, and she has blue eyes. Oops, that doesn't look right. It's like Cyclops. Erase that. Get back on pen. All right, blue eyes. Brian has brown hair. He has hair. He has brown eyes. And my dad, Charlie, he has brown hair and brown eyes. So then, Charlie and Wanda, my parents, they had 2 kids. Okay, I have lots of cousins too, but I only have 2 kids. They only have 2 kids. Me and my sister Emily. So, my sister has blonde hair. And I have pretty much blonde hair too, it gets lighter in the summer. Curlier hair. And we both have brown eyes. So my dad had brown hair, brown eyes. My mom had blonde hair, blue eyes. Yet we both have blonde hair and brown eyes. Huh. So then my question is, if my parents had another kid, I don't know if they will anytime soon, but if they had another kid, what would it look like? All right, so to figure this out, we have to talk about traits. So there's 2 different kinds of traits. You might have heard of them before. We have what are called dominant traits, and we have what are called recessive traits. So I like to give the example, dominant, when you're dominating a conversation or you're dominating a game, you're kind of winning. So it's the trait that if it's in a competition with a recessive gene, it's the one that's always going to win. Okay? So it's kind of like the gene that will win. And recessive only wins if it's with another recessive. You know, actually, I kind of want to liken it less to winning and more to just being really loud. If you're in a room with a lot of loud people, you hear the dominant ones. And recessive is kind of more quiet, I guess. Okay, so when we talk about dominant and recessive genes, you can look up on a table, on the internet, in different places, and you can also look at a pedigree or a family tree to figure out what traits are recessive or dominant. And it's not always clear which ones are. For example, freckles are actually a dominant trait, even though they're not as prevalent in the population. So when we're looking at dominant and recessive traits, look at like my family adjust eye color. So for the traits we have, I got from my dad, 1 chromosome, and from my mom, 1 chromosome. But I didn't just get 1 chromosome, I got actually 23 pairs of chromosomes. So again, these things are called chromosomes. Okay, I got 23 chromosomes from each person. So now together I have 46 chromosomes. And on those chromosomes I have these striped things. And these striped things are called genes. Okay, and those genes control different traits. What we do is we call these genes an allele. Different forms of the genes are called alleles. I like the word allele, especially if you write it in script. It's really loopy. So alleles are different forms of the gene. Oh, I'm getting all connecty. Sorry about that. All right. So, and we use letters to stand for the different forms of a gene. For a dominant trait, we're going to use a capital letter. So in this case, capital letter E is going to signify a gene for brown eyes. We're going to use a lowercase for recessive genes to signify blue eyes. I know that brown and, oh, sorry, that should not be a B. That should be an E. We're going to always use the same letter, even if they are 2 different traits with different letters. So we always use the same letter, capital E, lowercase e. I'm using E here for eyes, but you can use whatever letter you want. You could use Q for any of these. It doesn't really matter. All right. So from Charlie, if we look over here, I got a capital letter E from my dad. He has at least 1 capital letter E. But when we're talking about genes, we actually need to know that I have 46 genes right here. I have 46 genes. My dad only gave me 23, and my mom only gave me 23, so I have the normal 46. But they're humans too, so they actually have another set of genes for eye color. They gave me only 1 of the 2, but I don't know which one they gave me, so we need to look at it. So we know that, I'm actually going to move this one over here. We know that my dad has 1 of those capital E's. Excuse me for a second while I fix this. So I got 1 of these E's from my dad. I got a capital E from my dad. Now for my mom, remember how I said recessive genes only wins if it is in another recessive. So to get blue eyes, you actually have to have both of your alleles, both of these letters have to be lowercase. If one of these letters was a capital E, then that one would be too loud and it would actually make her eyes be brown. So the only way that she can have blue eyes is with a capital E, with 2 lowercase e's. So what about Brenda? Brenda has to be lowercase, lowercase for eye color. Bob? Same deal. Benny? Nancy? Gilbert? Going over to my dad's side of the family, Etzel has blue eyes, so he has 2 lowercase e's to signify that both are recessive. Also Tom and Liz. So when we're thinking about what my dad's genes are going to be now, he has one loud gene, one dominant gene, capital E. What else could he have? He could have 2 capital E's. He could also have 1 capital E, and he could have 1 lowercase e. Notice here how he actually has a gene. He might have an actual gene for blue eyes and a gene for brown eyes, but the brown eyes one would win out. So now we have to figure out what goes in this spot. What kinds of genes does my dad have? Does he have 2 capitals? Does he have 1 capital, 1 lowercase? And then what does that mean for me? So let's find out. If we look at Etzel, he has 2 lowercase e's. And Liz has 2 lowercase e's too. But Brian, Charlie, and Chip all have brown eyes. So we know that they have to have one of these dominant genes. What about their other one? And what about Carolyn? Carolyn has brown eyes too. So we know she has at least one of these dominant genes. But what about the other one? Well, to be able to get Liz, which has 2 lowercase e's, she'd have to inherit 1 lowercase e from Etzel, and she'd have to inherit 1 lowercase e from Liz. So that means that Carolyn must have 1 of each. Can Chip inherit 2 capital E's? Not really, because Etzel can only give a lowercase e. So then, this must be a lowercase e. So we're looking at me and trying to figure out what my genes are. If my dad has 1 capital E and 1 lowercase e, my mom has 2 lowercase e's, signifying that she has blue eyes and he has brown eyes, with 1 hidden blue-eyed gene right here. My eyes are brown, so I must have 1 capital E from my dad and 1 lowercase e from my mom. Same with my sister. The question is, what about this imaginary child? What color hair could they have? Could they inherit 1 capital E and 1 lowercase e? Yeah. Could they inherit 1 lowercase e and another lowercase e? They could. But what would the chances be of that? Okay, so to figure out the probability of what that imaginary kid would be, let's think about my parents' genes again. My dad was capital E lowercase e, and my mom was lowercase e lowercase e. Okay, so there's some words that we can use to help us keep saying these in a more clear way instead of e, 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 so like monkeys. All right, so if we have 2 alleles that are the same, we use our prefix homo, and zygous is the word. Homozygous means when they are the same. Homo means same. Zygous comes from the word zygote, meaning sex cell or egg and sperm. Okay, whereas capital E lowercase e, we say that as heterozygous. Hetero meaning different, and zygous from the same root. Okay, so we're going to talk about using those words. We also have a couple more words I want to use. Genotype is the actual genes, the actual letters. So these capital E's, lowercase e's, when I'm asking for a genotype, this is what I'm asking for. When I'm asking for phenotype, I'm asking for what these words mean. So like, do they have brown hair, or do they have blonde hair? What is that visible trait? What is that trait that's expressed? Although know that the phenotype might not always be seen because they can be behavioral. So right, back to my parents. So we have capital E, lowercase e, or heterozygous for my dad, homozygous for my mom. I'm going to use these symbols to signify a gender. So we're going to use this box, and we're going to divide it into 4, and this box is called a Punnett square. It helps us figure out the probabilities of each trait of the offspring. So we have a key here. Our key is capital E means brown, and lowercase e means blue. Okay, and we're going to put this on the Punnett square. We're going to have 1 trait outside on each side, and then we're going to put them together like a multiplication table. Oops, my gosh, I did that wrong. Come on. So you can see there's a 50-50 chance of the kid actually having blue eyes.